Okay, I'm going to show you guys my new car. It's a 1990 JDM Toyota Corolla Fx Gt. There it is. Neat. So the Fx Gt is a AE92 based car. So I don't remember what generation of Corolla that is, but it's a pretty common Corolla in the US. They sold a sedan and a wagon and the GTS and SR5 two-door coupe, but they never sold this little two-door hatchback in the US. Another cool version of this car was the Geo Prism GSI, which came in a five-door hatchback and a sedan. But again, this little two-door hatchback, it was never available in the US. I think this might be the only one in the country. One thing that happens when you have a Japanese car is you always get in the car on the wrong side, then you have to switch sides. But let's look at this side first. Anyway, the seats have the cool sort of checker pattern that came on the old domestic Corolla Fx 16. Pretty common on like the GT Corollas from Japan. They've got this cool checkered pattern. They have these really funky headrests that well, I can't operate the camera and the headrest at the same time, but these headrests actually did come on some of the domestic Corolla GTS's, but not all of them, I've noticed. It's got power windows, power locks, but the locks are kind of stiff. It's got this spiffy leather shift knob, which is what came on the domestic GTS. But the steering wheel is definitely a Japanese steering wheel. It's the same that came on the 11 of the same generation. I really like this gauge cluster, so clean and simple. Notice there's only like 95,000 kilometers on this car, which is less than 60,000 miles. It's got some dangling stereo wires. I'm in the middle of installing a new stereo. Anyway, let's start it up. Oh, let's look at this first. It's got this cool Fx Gt twin cam 16. It's got this cool 4 ABS anti-lock brakes label. It's got all this cool stuff. This is kind of different for a they don't have these in the States. The under lighting for the license plate, it's kind of just a unique little Japanese detail. Also, I like that this thing has a little grip. See how convenient that is. I took out like a rear deck that had speakers on it and stuff, and unfortunately the original grills are missing from this. I'm going to be installing new speakers, so the grills are going to be covered anyway, but it's a little unfortunate I don't have all the original stuff. What I'd love to get is the original cargo cover for this hatch. The other detail that I really like about this car is the rear wing. It's just kind of elegant and sleek. It's not like ridiculous and pretentious. It's not some big vapey spoiler, as my buddy would say. It's got an integrated brake light. It's subtle, but it's definitely noticeable. It definitely looks like a high performance car. It came with like the same wheels that came on the domestic Corolla GTS. They're sitting next to my garage now. Don't really like them, so I just slapped on some takeoffs for my race car. This is kind of an interesting little detail. This was not on a Fx 16, that's for sure. The seats do fold back and forth, surprisingly, which is kind of neat. Sounds really good. Should we pop the hood and look at the engine? Okay. So there's the small port 4AGE engine. Not very common in the US. It's not really very common anywhere. They only made this engine for 3 years. It was available in cars from 1990 to 1992. in the US, so that would only be the Corolla GTS and the Prism GSI. However, those versions were airflow meter. They had a big flapper meter right here. This one has a mass air pressure sensor instead. The battery I had to replace. It came with a dead battery. Japanese batteries have smaller terminals. It's a little messy right now, but I grabbed like a ground wire from like an MR2 and just kind of bolted it on to the original ground wire. This one has been fitted with an aftermarket exhaust header. It's kind of spiffy looking. I get a feeling I'm going to shield that a little better. It does have anti-lock brakes, which for 1990 is pretty unheard of, especially on like a little hatchback. The grille and headlights are super cool. It's one of the details of this car that I just love. They're shaped kind of with a bevel along the bottom. They look almost like the lights that came on the Prisms, but they're actually just a little bit different because they have this little angle right here. So I'm a little paranoid. If these get cracked, I'm kind of hosed. So I'm gonna take it for a little drive. The other thing about these cars that's really kind of funny is everybody thinks, oh, you end up driving on the wrong side of the road because it's so strange having the steering wheel over on this side, or you miss your shifts and stuff like that. But none of that is true. The thing that gets you every time is the wipers and the turn signals are on the opposite side of the steering column. And so what you end up doing is turning on the wipers every time you go around a corner. At least that's how it was when I started driving this car. And now I'm so used to it, I only do that half of the time in this car and half of the time in my other cars. So it just gets worse, basically. You might be able to hear a little squeak coming from the steering wheel horn contact. The engine sounds great. The suspension is really smooth and feels pretty, there's no like loose, rattly parts of the suspension. It is a lovely day for a drive. I should take you up the canyon or something, but instead I've got more chores. I'm just going to get on the freeway and go back to my house, which is pretty close by. Screwing up your turn signals is just always leave your hand on the stick shift, because then the only hand available is right over the turn signals. So I'm going to take you up Mill Creek Canyon, which is really scenic, and you've probably seen it if you watch any of JDM Legends episodes or YouTube videos. Occasionally will buzz up here in their cars and take pictures. Another one is Everyday Driver. Those guys are local, so a lot of the really fun drives that I like to go out on show up in their videos pretty regularly. Oh, and here's another thing about driving a right-hand drive JDM car is if there's someone in your way on a left turn, can't really see out to see the oncoming traffic. There's somebody turning left in front of you, so you have to just kind of wait. One thing I've been intending to do is just print up a little strip of miles to kilometers conversion and just tape it into my gauge cluster here. I'm sure I'll get used to it soon and be able to just know what my speed limits are. it's a postcard for a domestic Toyota Corolla Fx Gt GTS. This postcard was printed and mailed out by dealers back in 1986. Not long after that, I got my first car, which was a Corolla Fx 16 GTS in silver with a red pinstripe. That was such a great car. Really inspired me just throughout all of my, life's decisions about cars. I really didn't know much about cars back then, but I knew that car was a blast. And they still are. I still drive one. It's a daily beater. It's got a little custom hitch on the bumper, so I can load up a bike rack, take that thing up in the mountains, go mountain biking. It handles great. It's probably the lightest car that ever came with a 4AGE engine in it. You can toss it around. In ways it's more fun than an MR2, which to me is like the ultimate 4AGE car. Just because I'm a big advocate of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive design. But anyway, I figured that the next generation, this car would be incrementally better than an FX16, which is pretty close. I don't know if that's actually true or not. This is definitely a little more refined. It's not quite as rowdy. I'm going to see if some aftermarket springs will wake it up a little bit. It's still a blast, but boy, it's tough to beat that FX16. That is such a fun little car. That's better. Some good light, open roads.